Hey everyone, welcome to my January weeklies plan with me video. In this video, we'll be continuing on with the ice cream theme that I started in the January monthlies. I'll be using Arrtx Acrylic paint markers to color in a majority of these pages, and I'm also bringing in a few Tombow brush pens as well for adding some color to the day boxes, as you'll see later on. I'm getting started drawing a little scene with Gray Kitty at an ice cream parlor. Because I've been so busy, I needed to be able to create some fairly quick and easy weekly pages for this month, and so I decided to make another Dutch door spread since I've been enjoying using those more frequently. This time, instead of doing a vertical Dutch door, I believe it would be called, I'm doing more of a horizontal layout. If there are names for different Dutch door spreads like this, somebody please let me know. But basically this top portion of the page will be visible throughout all 5 weeks of layouts that I'll be creating, and I'll be able to flip through all of the weeks beneath this drawing. So the drawing at the top here will be the most detailed drawing of this entire video, and as you can see, it's not too complicated at all. So I think this will be a great video for beginners looking to create a variety of easy weekly layouts, or for anyone just looking for a quick and easy setup. I've sketched out some scoops of ice cream, and I'm writing in the days of the week on them because I know that I'll be able to see it a little bit through the paint, and I like the placement that I had originally sketched out for them. This is just my personal preference working with these paint markers so far. If you're more confident with writing in your numbers and days and finding the right balance for them, then you can totally skip this step. Lettering and numbering is just not my strong suit, so I often try to make sure I have everything looking the way I like first before coming in and making it permanent. But we'll come back to that in a moment. First, I'm coloring in this freezer that's holding these different cartons of ice cream. In the monthly video, I outlined all of my drawings, then painted them in, and then came back after the paint dried and outlined them once again. This is fairly easy to do with a black fine liner, but I've been using dark gray fine liners lately, and I noticed that because they are a lighter tone rather than a solid black, that coming back in and drawing over the lines again does not always give a consistently dark line or coverage. Sometimes the lines will be darker or lighter depending on the color paint that is under it, or if I'm drawing on the paper itself, if that makes any sense at all. I find it difficult to put visual things into words. But basically, I'm just trying to color around all of my outlines the best I can and not cover them up. Hence all of my scribbly looking painting / coloring. It definitely wasn't cute to watch all of this footage back while editing, but it did create the result I wanted for the most part. I was also still trying to learn how these markers work and behave since I had only ever used them a couple of times before. That's why for most of the larger sections of paint, I would actually go over each about 2 or 3 times to get a smoother looking coverage. And when I was coloring in Gray Kitty, I was kind of using a similar coloring technique as I do when I use alcohol markers. With alcohol markers, you want to make sure the paper stays wet as you're coloring because as it dries, the color will get darker as you go over it again. And I didn't know if these paint markers would somewhat react in a similar way. So apologies if my coloring is not super appealing to watch in this first section as I scribble all over the place, but I can assure you it'll get a lot better looking as we work on the weekly pages below this drawing. I'm also going to level with you, these pages were a mess to create in so many ways. As you can see, I just splattered purple paint all over my pages because I decided to go against my advice in the previous video and open my marker above my journal instead of off to the side where it could have splattered on a scrap piece of paper. Usually I can cover up most of my mistakes, especially since paint markers are fairly forgiving, but with these pages, it was just mistake after mistake after mistake. To cover up this mess, I tried painting over each spot with white paint, but it all looked so obvious in the end that I decided to cover the entire day box with white paint, so at least it was consistent looking rather than having spotty little cover-ups all over. These constant mistakes were quite frustrating if I'm being honest, but I thought it would be a good reminder that this is just how creating art is. I'm still a fairly new artist. I've only been doing art for the last 3 years or so, so maybe this gets a bit better as you improve, but to me, not every drawing is going to be a winner. I think sometimes we can see other people's art or bullet journal pages and be so blown away by how perfect everything looks. For one thing though, if they look that perfect, then that artist has probably put a lot of hours into practicing and being able to make them look that good. And I don't want to downplay that at all. What I want to point out is that art is a constant practice, and in order to learn and get better, we have to be okay with making mistakes and having days where nothing seems to go our way in our drawings or paintings. This is a big reason I like to consider my bullet journal as just one of my many sketchbooks, or essentially a place where I can practice and play and make mistakes. This takes the pressure off feeling like every page needs to look perfect, especially when I'm posting these on Instagram and YouTube for others to see. I know I'm gonna make mistakes, so I need to be okay with that. And I am, because I fully embrace being a new artist and being completely transparent that I still have so much to learn. I think when we have it in our minds that everything we create has to be perfect, that thought can completely stop us from even wanting to get started. Not every piece of art is going to be perfect or beautiful, but that's the point of an art practice, to learn and get better. We can't be afraid to create because we might make mistakes, like drawing all of these lines with the wrong shade of pink, because mistakes are one of the most valuable things in an art practice, in my opinion. So I just wanted to use these messy pages as an opportunity to show the real side of YouTube videos and an art practice. I had so many silly mistakes happen here, but I just kept creating. With how frustrated I was at the time, I really thought that I was going to hate all of these pages. But in the end, even though they were complicated, I'm still really happy with how they turned out. And I think that's another part of practicing art. Just learning to embrace the ugly stages and keep going anyhow. Don't just give up when you feel stuck. Know when you need to take a break and step away, because I definitely believe that when you step away and come back, you have fresh eyes and you may see it differently and maybe not hate it as much. But I personally really believe in finishing what I start when it comes to a challenging piece or project, because you can learn so much from it. And if nothing else, you teach your mind that you don't back down from challenges or difficult things. And when you come up against another challenge later, you know that because you've overcome challenges before, that you'll be able to do it again. Who knew art would have so many life lessons? So I hope in showing you my messy pages here, that it can be encouraging in some way to let go of expectations to create anything perfectly. If you've always wanted to start a bullet journal, but seeing other people's beautiful pages and thinking you won't be able to pull it off has stopped you, I would just like to challenge you to put those thoughts aside and try a bullet journal practice. Emphasis on practice. Do it for fun, do it to learn, and just use your journal as a creative outlet and remove all of the pressure and expectations from it. We all have to start somewhere, and art is a never-ending journey of learning and growing. I'm just hoping that my mess can encourage even one of you to begin bullet journaling if it's something you've always felt called to do, but also nervous to start. I feel like if I were to rebrand my channel and my art, it would be something along the lines of incredibly imperfect, but still cute. And in the end, who wants perfect art anyhow? In a world full of AI art, I think the imperfections that come from human hands is far more beautiful anyhow. And I think people are craving a touch of humanity these days. So go out there and create, and if you feel like sharing what you make, I would absolutely love to see it, and you can tag me at Koana_art on Instagram. And now, with my TED Talk out of the way, we can get back to my very simple weekly pages. This is a weekly layout that I've done many times before, and I really enjoy how much space it provides for each day of the week. I decided to spruce up the page a little bit by adding these colored dots all around it that I've been using here and there throughout the pages of this theme. Polka dots or sparkles are always a great way to fill up blank space, in my opinion. They're simple and adorable. Because the paint markers are a little unpredictable and I'm not as familiar with them, I decided to bring back my Tombow brush pens to draw in some lines inside these boxes. These colors don't match the theme perfectly, but I thought they were cute and fun and went with the color palette well enough. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know how often I like to add these colored lines to my weeklies because I really love color and I have a hard time knowing when to stop adding it. But the thing that really tied these pages together was adding these little white highlights to the polka dots. I don't know how something so simple can be so cute, but it made me forget about all of the frustrating mistakes I had made up until this point. Something still felt like it was missing though, so I added a darker pink border around the weekday headers and added a few more highlights which wrapped up these pages. And here's another very quick and simple layout. It's just 6 boxes, and I have a drawing of Gray Kitty in the longer Wednesday box, and then I have Saturday and Sunday sharing the other long box on the right. I kept the drawings very simple on these pages because I didn't want to get too carried away with them, but at the same time, these little drawings can add so much to the page and tying the theme together. This time I'm coloring in the header of the box and the outline in the same color. I decided to freehand these because I figured it would be easier than using a ruler, so these boxes turned out really wonky, but I figure if you do something over and over again enough times, then it looks like you did it intentionally. So here we are. This box got super wonky and out of hand, but I was able to smooth it out a little bit and use the white paint marker on the inner corner to calm it down some. It's actually pretty funny how these are some of the simplest pages I've created in a long time, and I still found a way to make it complicated. Hopefully if you recreate these pages, you'll have a much easier go of it. I feel like this is also something that's just bound to happen when trying out a new medium like paint markers. Next month I'll be working with colored pencils, which is also a medium I honestly have not used very often. But I feel like those will be a little bit less unpredictable than these markers were, and I'm always down to test out new art products. I'm adding more colored lines to these day boxes. And then adding the days of the week to the tops or sides of each of them. Not sure why I decided to break up the pages this way, but I committed to it. I decided to use my Tombow marker to color in Gray Kitty because I really didn't want to have to color around all of the outlines with the paint marker like I had done on the first page, and it felt really nice to come back to my Tombow markers for coloring since they're something I'm so much more familiar with than these paint markers. Then I just added a few white highlights around the boxes, and that finished up these pages. Here's another very simple layout that is reminiscent of one of my weekly layouts from February of last year. I actually don't have a plan with me video recorded of those pages because they were literally some of the very first bullet journal pages that I ever made. Even though it might be a bit late, I think I'm still gonna make a 2024 bullet journal flip through video because I think it could be fun to go through the year and see everything I created. Last year was my first year creating bullet journal pages, and I learned so much, and I think it's really awesome that I've been able to document a large majority of this journey along the way. And I hope that my channel is also encouraging to anyone who is also new to bullet journaling. I just like to show that you don't have to be perfect or amazing just to get started. And I think maybe some of you even resonate with what I do because it's not overly complicated or perfect looking. And I just want to be that channel that makes bullet journaling accessible and achievable for anybody who wants to do it. I'm hoping with having almost a year of bullet journaling under my belt that I'll have more insight and fun techniques to share with you all. I really want to continue testing out new art products and mediums and stretching my comfort zone with different themes. I am also dedicated to drawing daily this year, and I actually started a Draw Daily program to hold myself accountable. This has been something I've wanted to do for so long, and on the one hand, it seems a bit extreme to set the challenge to draw every day, but on the other hand, I find that this might be the best way for me. I feel like if I can build a daily habit, then I won't want to break the streak, and eventually drawing day after day will create a concrete habit. I'm not going to beat myself up if I miss a day for a legitimate reason, but I am going to try my hardest to actually draw daily because I've noticed the compound effect of doing this in the past and how my skills would feel like they up-leveled faster and I would feel more confident in my drawings, and I really want to experience that more often and just have the ability to draw more things in general, because I feel a little restricted right now in what I'm capable of drawing. So I'm just finishing up these pages the way I have with the others by adding some colored lines to the boxes and adding a few highlights. Now onto the final set of weekly pages where all of the day boxes are in the shape of ice cream cones. The top of this page is the other side of the header that we drew on page 1, which will also be visible no matter which week I'm looking at once we cut off the tops of the pages for the Dutch doors. If that doesn't make sense yet, it will soon. Since I did some yearly and quarterly goal planning in my 2025 setup, I thought it would be a smart move to have my top 3 goals for January visible throughout these weeks. Then I've drawn up a little menu board where I can have a mini calendar that will also be visible for all of the weeks. This thing was incredibly awkward to color in, but I think I definitely got in my own way with coloring a lot of things on these pages. I think it'd be really nice to have some fine-tipped black paint markers for smaller details, like I have with the small white Posca paint pen that I use all the time for my finer highlight details. The fine liner worked okay on top of the paint, but I probably could have made things easier for myself too. But all part of the journey of learning how to use these paint markers. In the end, I found that it's much easier if I don't have to outline anything at all and just can paint without lines. But that's also challenging for me because I really enjoy the contrast that an outline provides. So for those of you who are more familiar with paint markers, let me know any of your tips and tricks in the comments below. I would be super grateful to figure out a better workflow for creating with these. In the meantime, I think I'll order the fine-tip version of the black Posca paint markers and do my outlines with that after the colored paint has dried, and I think that would eliminate a large majority of my problems. It was really fun to color in these larger areas though, like the ice cream and the cones. I really love the bold and opaque look of these paint markers, and their ability to layer and cover up or adjust mistakes makes them a really fun medium to work with. I already have a super cute theme picked out for March where I'll be using these markers again, and I think with what I've learned and picking up those finer black paint markers, I'll have a much easier time creating the pages next time. I learned so much in this video alone, and that goes back to my point at the beginning of how valuable making mistakes really is. Like learning when the paint marker is running dry and making sure to pump more paint into it over a scrap piece of paper off to the side, or learning that it's actually more useful to draw the outlines in after the first layer of paint has dried. Now that I've figured some of that stuff out, I'll be able to have even more fun the next time I decide to use these paint markers, and I'll be just a bit more confident with them, and I think that's part of the fun of an art practice and going outside of your comfort zone with trying something new. So I'm super happy that Arrtx decided to reach out to me and allow me to test out these paint markers. Although I had wanted to try out paint markers for a while, I already have so many art supplies at home that I need to use, and I'm not sure when I would have picked up paint markers on my own. Because there were already so many colors on this page, I decided to use the gray Tombow marker again to add some lines for my goals section. And then I'm just filling in these empty spaces with more cute polka dots. Then I just had to fill in the days of the week, and add some highlights onto everything in order to finish up these pages. I also used the fine-tipped white Posca paint marker in order to write the numbers on these dots, and I really love how it turned out. And it made me wish that I would have used this paint marker for some of the other words or day boxes throughout these pages. Just another discovery that I can now take along with me the next time I use these. Now the last thing we have to do is cut off the tops of the inner pages of some of these weekly spreads. I've got my handy dandy cutting mat here, and I'll just place that under this first page and use my X-Acto knife to cut off the top of this page. This journal does have some threads holding the pages together near the binding, so I'm being careful not to cut any of those. I was low-key afraid I was going to cut the strings holding this section of paper together and that all of my pages were going to fall out, but luckily that didn't happen. So that is something you'll want to be aware of if you do this style of Dutch door. And I'm just using a corner rounder to cut off the edges of these pages so that they'll match the rest of the rounded corners in this journal. And with that, you can finally see the tops of both of these pages no matter which week we're looking at. And now we can do our final flip through of all of the weekly pages. These pages were super messy, but in the end, really rewarding when I realized how much I had learned. I hope you enjoyed this video and watching me attempt to overcome all of the silly obstacles that came up throughout it. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next one.